If you have a MacBook and if you're not using Apple containers, then you're missing out on so much. Apple Container is a tool for creating and running Linux containers using lightweight virtual machines on your Mac. So let's understand the concept of Apple containers using a small real world example. Imagine that you have a Windows laptop and you have built a Python app. It runs fine on your laptop because you have the right Python version installed and the right libraries and the right system settings. All right. So now you go to your friend who has a MacBook and you try to run your app on his MacBook. It fails because he might have the wrong Python version, he might have missing libraries, or he might also have different system settings. So the problem is it works on your computer but not on your friend's computer. Now enter the concept called containers. So think of containers like a small box where you package your app. All right. So you put your app and Python and all the required libraries and settings inside a small container. Then you go to your friend and hand over the container to him. He runs the container on his MacBook and the app will exactly run the same way that it did on your laptop. You can think of it like giving your friend a ready to go computer inside a small box that runs only your app. Apple uses containers in two main ways, depending on the context. The first way is iOS and macOS app containers, which is also referred to as sandboxing. So every app you install on your iPhone, iPad, or Mac runs inside its own container called sandbox. So this container is like a locked box where the app can store its own data like documents, settings, cache, etc. So the app cannot access other apps' containers. So this will protect your privacy and prevent apps from messing around with each other. Let's take an example. Let's say that you have WhatsApp on your iPhone. So the WhatsApp's data like messages, images is stored in a WhatsApp container. Instagram cannot just go and peek into WhatsApp container. Both apps can only access their own containers unless you allow sharing. All right. So this is why when you uninstall an app on an iPhone or a iPad, all of its data disappears because the container is deleted. The second way is Apple's support for developer containers. So let's say you want to run Linux and you have a MacBook. So running Linux using Docker or a virtual machine is a heavy task because so you take a Docker and you run a container and inside that container you run Linux. So the problem is the Docker itself runs on a virtual machine behind the scenes. So first there's a virtual machine, then there's a Docker, then there's a container, and inside that container there's a Linux and you're trying to use that Linux. So this whole thing will be very heavy on your computer. And when it comes to virtual machines, think that you install a virtual machine on your MacBook and virtual machines are basically very slow and it messes up with your experience. So Apple saw this and thought, why not let's build a Docker-like containers application for developers. So it saw that developers need Linux applications every day. They use Linux applications. So why not let's build an open source thing? So they came up with a concept, Apple containers, and it is a tool for creating and running Linux containers using a lightweight virtual machines. So the lightweight virtual machines is a important word because Docker containers use heavy virtual machines behind the scenes, but Apple containers use lightweight virtual machines behind the scenes. I personally got amazed when I tried out Apple containers and installed Ubuntu on it because of how speed and how fast the process is and how fast the Ubuntu works on the terminal. So let's actually go and see how do you install Apple container on a MacBook and install Ubuntu on that container. All right, now we are on a terminal and there are two ways of installing Apple containers. One is using a GitHub package and another one is using Homebrew. I prefer Homebrew because I'm used to it. So basically if you have Homebrew, it's good. If not, It's very easy. It's just one command to install Homebrew, but I already have Homebrew installed on mine. So yeah, now let's go and install Apple Container. The command for that is brew install cask container. So it started downloading the packages and it will take care of all the installation part, and I love this about Homebrew. Now that it is installed, let's verify it by writing brew list. If you can see, I have the container listed here. Now we have container on our Mac. Let's actually run this container. You can write container system start. So it is starting the container, and hit yes. It is downloading the kernel and all the packages needed. So after this is done, you can also check the version of the container by writing the command container version. Mine is 0.4.1. Now it's time to actually install Ubuntu on this. It is very easy to install Ubuntu on an Apple container. You just have to write container run IT, which is referred to as interactive way. And you can also write a name for the user. I would write Ubuntu shell, and you have to also specify the version that you want to use. Ubuntu 24.04 and bash. All right, so it started the process. Let's wait. We are done with the installation of Ubuntu, and now we are the root user and we are inside the shell. You can do anything. First, I would like to update my packages or the package manager. Now you can play around with this shell and basically use Ubuntu or any other distribution that you installed on the Apple container. Now, if you want to stop this container, exit from the shell, and you can basically write container system stop, and it stops the container. It's that easy. I'm using Apple container every day to learn Linux on my MacBook, and I will also recommend you to try it out and share your experience in the comments. Thank you all. I'll see you in the next video.